And I can't think of a better way to segue right into our next guest who has done that. She's also another good friend. And what I love about Robyn, personally, is her ability to always hold space. I've never said that to her, but she can hold space like nobody else that I know. And what I mean by that, she has a loving presence, and it's always in her smile. I don't think there's a time that I've met her where she hasn't smiled, you know. Just a wonderful, delightful person. She's not only a successful realtor, she's a life coach, and she's an author. I want to talk a little bit about her being an author to show how she has stepped into her courage. She's written a book called From Grief to Grace, and it's a story talking about how she lost her adult son tragically in an automobile accident and her journey through that grief to grace. And I just think it's just so wonderful to have somebody not only stay in grief, but move right into grace. And she's going to give us a couple of suggestions, you know, that could be helpful for you stepping into your grace, into your power. Robyn DeLong, please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Wow. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
When JG asked me to talk, I wasn't sure. You know, people have said, including yourself, you're so courageous. And it wasn't a word that I would have applied to myself, being courageous. But sometimes life delivers a blow. And when that blow happens, you get to test your mettle. I was studying these principles. I've been studying these principles since I can't remember not, probably consciously from the age of about 21. So it's been a while, just so you know. But how you apply them varies in your life. And I got a phone call, one of those phone calls that no parent ever wants to get. It was at 7:35 in the morning. It was a beautiful summer morning on July 25th. 2013. And my son was my son Michael. Many of you have I think a few of you know Michael. Beautiful, beautiful man, 36 years old, had done many solo performances. He had sung at Spiritual Life Center. I mean, he was such a joy to watch him perform, such a joy to be in his presence. And he, I realized afterwards, he's like my best friend, someone that I really was able to communicate with. So I got this phone call that he had been killed. You know, I mean, he was visiting his dad. I got a call from his dad's wife, and she's talking about a truck and a this and a that, and you know those alarms that go off in your system, and I thought maybe he was in the hospital, but when she told me he was gone, I experienced that full body grief that nobody wants to go through. And I also heard him say, "I'm so sorry." I mean, I could hear him. And I heard him again 3 weeks later when I was still I was getting messages, but I wasn't sure what I was getting. And I heard him 3 weeks later. I was sobbing through a sunrise. So I was in this most beautiful, sacred space. The sun was coming up. It was gorgeous, and I could see it because I was actually on a cruise ship. I was sobbing. And I heard him again. I heard him behind me. He said, "Mom," loud enough that I stopped. And he said, "Mom, notice the beauty all around you. Don't miss it being sad, wishing things were different. I'm right here." That's wise, to not miss the present moment, wishing things were different. And how many times I do that? I will miss the present moment. I appreciated what Kara was saying about the chatter, because the chatter will take you out of the present moment, out of the beauty. And I did. I took this breath and noticed the sunrise and thanked him for his ongoing connection and my ability to pay attention and to learn how to communicate with him in a new way. But so much of our life comes down to choosing moment by moment by moment. And I found I needed to choose to live with a broken, open heart, to really find a way to continue to come from this broken, open heart with joy, not let my smile disappear, not get buried in the grief. It's the culture we live in would tell you you're not supposed to get better, that this is an event that will put you down, and some people bury themselves with their children or with their loved ones. They will bury themselves. I had a lot of different messages coming to me, but images and feelings. And when I was hit so hard with this news, I felt the image that came to me was like Crater Lake. I don't know why. I've never visited it, and I would love to go and see it. But it was like, I know that was formed by a meteor crashing and scarring deeply into the earth. And I felt like this meteor had just smashed into my heart. And like, how is that? It hurt, physically hurt. It wasn't like just a metaphorical hurt. It was painful. And at the same time, the people that stepped forward to love me, to hold me, to nurture me, the love that was coming forward, if I had tried to shut down the pain, I knew it would shut down the love. So I had this image, and I thought, it's like when the healing waters start filling that place where the meteor hit. The healing waters of love. The deeper the crater, the more love pours in, the more you're aware of it. So the intense love I felt for my son and the intense pain were in perfect balance. And to just hold, I used my hands. I knew I needed to stay open and feel the pain and feel the love and notice I had a choice about where I was going to put my attention. I could choose, whenever I saw his photo or heard his voice, which I have lots of beautiful recordings and beautiful images of him. And I could choose to cry and feel the sadness and the missing. Or you talked about training your brain to go somewhere else. I could say, thank you, God, that I had the joy of this young man in my life, the privilege of having him in my life. So I would notice, I mean, it's like, I think the one thing, if you're going to be able to be what I would call a conscious, courageous chooser, you have to realize you have a choice. You can't realize you have a choice if you aren't paying attention. So the first thing to do is to notice, where'd your attention go? Where is my attention? Is my attention on the now, or is my attention on, the past or the future? Also, is my attention on what I want or what I don't want? I want to have an ongoing, loving relationship with my son. And it was very, very important to me that I honor all the messages. I wear a hummingbird because he came to me as a hummingbird. Early on, I was getting and people were saying hummingbirds were showing up. So I had all these anecdotal things that were going on, and I wanted to know more about it. It takes courage to even talk to some people about the fact that I have this ongoing communication with him, because it's like, some people would think, get out the net and pull, or, one of my heroes is Pollyanna. I love Pollyanna. And do you know the story of Pollyanna? So I think she gets a bad rap. People use the word Pollyanna-ish, like you're not being realistic, you're being naive. She played the glad game, and she learned to focus on something that would be a gift. And the way the story started, she's an orphan, but her father taught her the glad game before he passed. She had thought she was going to get a doll in this package from Christmas, and it got mixed up, and she got a crutch. Well, how do you be glad about getting a crutch? But she said, well, I'm glad I don't have to use it. It's like, however you spin it, there is a way, and it will change the energy that you're running through your system. So I had a lot of practicing to do with the events that went on, and when people would say, I'm so sorry, and I would, and using the term loss. I don't use that term about my son. There was a change in the energy, there was a change in our connection and our relationship. But I have learned that living with a broken, open heart is really a practice. I love the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I had read that book, I'd taught from that book, I'd coached people through that book, and it was a book that stood me in really good stead, because he talks about experiencing everything fully. Don't hold on to the experience, especially if you're wanting to stay open, because you'll get like debris. It's kind of like it holds on to you, and then you can't process it. And I thought, okay, how do I hold this whole thing? How do I do that? And it's a day by day practice. I wrote the book because I kept having chapters coming through. I was like, in the first 3 weeks, I had different things that I knew were important, like feel everything fully. I also, so that was like this stage of immersing myself, not resisting it, to fully experience the pain and see what it felt like, but experience the joy, because it's a strange mixture, joy and pain at the same time. And if you're open to it, you'll see they're both very present. And then don't go down the path of woulda, shoulda, coulda, wish I'da, all of those things that would take you down this road, because there's always something you think you could have done, especially when in this instance, I kept thinking, well, if I just hadn't let him go, how could I know not to let him go to his father's house? There's but the mind will try and beat you up. So the woulda, shoulda, coulda, I was like, no. And if I found myself down that road, I would bring myself back with a memory that was a powerful, happy memory. So I would bring myself back to focus on the joy, focus on the beauty. That was straight from Michael, but it makes such a difference to put your focus where you want it. We've learned spiritually, the way you create is you put your attention. Kira did a beautiful job of saying what you want in the present tense. You're putting your attention there, or you can put your attention on what you don't want and you'll get more of that. So we're always choosing where we're going to place our attention. We're painting with the paintbrush of energy, and we're the ones that get to design what that's going to look like, where we're going to throw that energy, where we're going to put it, how we're going to place it. But if we're not conscious, if we don't pay attention, we don't notice our choice points. There's a story of a man named Wild Bill Cody, and he did not grow up in the West, and he's not a Westerner. But he was given that name because he had handlebar mustache and kind of a wild look. But I heard about him from Jack Canfield. I think the story might be in one of his Chicken Soup for the Souls. But Cody was in 1939, Warsaw, Poland. Who knows what happened in Warsaw, Poland to the Jews? They rounded up the whole village and they killed everybody, his wife, his 2 sons, his 3 daughters in front of him. He begged them to kill him. He begged them. And they wouldn't, because he spoke German and a few other languages, and he was an attorney. He was very bright. And he said he had a point where he knew that it would be easy to hate these people. It would be very easy to go into hatred. But as an attorney, he had seen what hate would do. And so he said, if I live a day, a year, however many years, I will choose love. I will choose to love and to forgive, and that's where he came from. He knew in that moment he made that choice. Well, when they liberated the camps, he had been there 6 years, but the people that were telling the story about him thought he had just arrived, because he was not emaciated, he was fully erect, he was the go-to person at the camp for everybody that had a need. He was the mediator. He lived a full, beautiful life in the camp because he chose love over fear. Now, I'd like to be able to think I could do it under those circumstances, but knowing when you're going to make that choice, when you get triggered, that's the moment of choice, when you get triggered. There's a quote I love by Rumi that I would like to read to you, and I love this. Rumi lived 800 years ago, and I found this quote after I'd written my second book. He says, "Sorrow prepares you for joy. It violently sweeps everything out of your house so that new joy can find space to enter. It shakes the yellow leaves from the bough of your heart so that fresh green leaves can grow in their place. It pulls up the rotten roots so that new roots hidden beneath have room to grow. Whatever sorrow shakes from your heart, far better things will take their place." That's quite a promise, that sorrow prepares us for joy. But I do think we have a choice between sorrow and joy if we welcome them both and we recognize the gift. Finding the gift in something like losing, having a child die. I didn't know that was possible, to find a gift. And yet, I think I'm more vulnerable, I'm more open, I'm more present. I have been willing to talk about it. I know there have been people for whom, having heard this story, they're more able to process their own grief. Because there is a spiral of healing that takes you right on up as you move from being willing to feel it and to pay attention and to make the choices. And then at some point, I remember the first day I didn't cry. And I was like, oh. And I actually had to make a choice that day because I thought, well, maybe I'm not okay. Maybe I'm healing too fast. Or, it was like the mind wanted to tell me it's not okay to not cry. And oh, of course, thank you. Thank you. See, he's always with me. All right. See, that's it. He's very present. The energy is so sweet. I'm done. You can ask me questions if you want to.
I just have to hug you on that one.
Oh, thank you.
Because we know.
We know.
Go ahead.
Yeah, any questions?